Hi, welcome to Plenty. I'm really excited for today's episode. I have as a guest Lyrik Fryer, who is the co-founder of WorkPlay Branding. So as she was in college competing as a D1 soccer player, Lyrik's mom approached her to co-found a company. And that company has gone on to scale so fast. It's called WorkPlay Branding. I am a customer of theirs, and they make it incredibly streamlined, easy, pleasurable, and affordable for people like myself to have quarterly brand shoots. So in this episode, we dive into how Lyrik thinks about systems, which is really the secret to her company's fast success. The two things you need to be thinking about every time you create a system, why systems are so essential to the growth and ease and profitability of your company. We talk about Lyrik's spiritual and psychic abilities and how they have contributed to her company's success. And we talk about her strategic marketing and how she has thought about circles of influence to have the feeling in the marketplace of, oh my gosh, those people are everywhere, to build brand visibility and trust and to grow her customer base. Lyrik is absolutely wise beyond her years. I remember the day I found out how old she was, and I was like, how is it possible that you have it this together and you are this age? She is delightful. She is refreshing. She's also going to share with you why your brand visuals matter in terms of your marketing and your revenue. It is such a juicy episode. You're going to love it. Enjoy. Welcome to Plenty. I'm your host, Kate Northrup, and together we are going on a journey to help you have an incredible relationship with money, time, and energy, and to have abundance on every possible level. Every week, we're going to dive in with experts and insights to help you unlock a life of plenty. Let's go fill our cups. Please note that the opinions and perspectives of guests on the Plenty podcast are not necessarily reflective of the opinions and perspectives of Kate Northrup or anyone who works within the Kate Northrup brand. Hey, Lyrik, thank you for being here.
I am so excited. Thank you for having me.
So when we first connected, it was on Zoom on like December 31st or something. It was like right at the end of the year in 2021.
Yes.
And I was blown away. I decided, I think that day or like within 24 hours for us to work together with WorkPlay Branding. Mm-hmm. And from the moment I started the onboarding, and even during that call, but it's like one thing for people to say something and then it's another thing for you to experience it. I was blown away by how automated and systemized and streamlined your company is. And so I really want to dig into that because systems are the one thing that can help people. I mean, there's a million different things, but they're one of the most important ways that people can do less and make more in their businesses. So I want to start out by asking you, were you always into systems? Did you always think this way? Or was it something you learned over time?
It was definitely drilled into me by my parents.
Okay.
And more specifically, my mom, who is actually my co-founder.
Yes.
So that kind of gives you a little insight onto how the business...
Is she a Capricorn?
She is a Sag.
Okay, what are you?
Sagittarius. I'm a Pisces. But I have a Sag moon and I'm a Gemini rising. So I have a lot of things happening.
Okay, Gemini rising. And then what's your mom? So your mom is a Sag sun. And then what's her rising and moon? Do you know?
I don't know.
You don't know your mother's chart off the top of your head? Anyway, there's got to be some Capricorn in there with one or both of you because
there has to be.
There's a lot of good structure that you have.
I know specifically for me, there's no Capricorn, but I think she definitely has Capricorn in her. And so my parents have always been entrepreneurs since I've been born. And in their business, I've really been able to see them grow their business. And I've always been obsessed with this idea that you can provide a service, get paid for it, and then you can use that money to go do whatever you want in life. You can use those resources to do whatever you want. And so I've been always obsessed with that idea. And so watching my parents build businesses while I grew up, it was just like, whoa, like, how are you doing that? And my mom was always the more behind the scenes business operations person in those businesses. And I remember her just being like, you have to document everything and you have to write everything down and you have to create what are called SOPs.
Yes.
And
standard operating procedures, in case you don't know what that is.
There you go. Yes, you have to do that. And I just remember in high school, her like being like so adamant with her employees about following the system step by step. And it would be like, she would get frustrated if the employee didn't do it step by step. And I innately trust my mother, right? Yeah. And so I would be like, okay, I feel you, Mom, but like, why? Like, why does it have to be like that? And so I would be thinking that in my head. And in high school, I was, always helping my parents out with their businesses because I was so curious about it. And I ended up managing their entire chiropractic clinic.
Oh, wow. Starting at what age?
Starting at 16.
Okay. Amazing.
Because I was like, I want to make money and like, I want to be a part of business and I want to, so they put me to work because I wanted to. And because I was so ingrained in this idea of systems, I was able to go in and manage their teams right away. But I actually didn't understand why the system was so important until I started WorkPlay Branding. And I actually saw how systems really are able to automate a business and allow you to actually just sit more in the CEO seat rather than like in your business and being an employee of your business. And that's where it all kind of started. So it was like my mom consistently just like, got to document everything. And so now my philosophy in systemizing a business is really simple. It's twofold. It's first part, can this system handle 1,000 people going through it?
I love that.
And that makes you think really big about the system and really creatively, because you could make a system for how the business is right now,
right? But
that's not going to help you scale the business. That's just going to fix the issue right now. Mm-hmm. But if you think about how can I create a system that can handle 1,000 more people through it, now you start thinking differently about the system and more creatively about the system.
And do you mean like 1,000 clients?
1,000 clients, yes. Got it. And again, you're also thinking about, can this scale on the back end with my team? Right. So can like 10 more team members implement this system? So you're also thinking about both sides. But 1,000 clients means we're going to have X more team members in this department running the system. So it's all kind of glued together with that. Yeah. And then my second part of a system is, will I be asked a question about how to do this complex task after the system is created? And if the answer is yes, they're going to have to know how to do this teeny little part of this system that only I know, then I know that the system isn't complete. And that part is a little bit more of a working in progress with your system, because you'll create it and then you'll get feedback from your team or clients on, hey, how do I do this? Or where do I find this? And I'm like, if you're asking me that question, or if you're asking your manager that question, that means the system isn't good enough. That means there's a hole somewhere in the system. Right. So those are my two big things that I think about whenever I'm creating a new procedure, a new parts of the company or team. And so when it came to the onboarding per se, I asked myself the same question. Can 1,000 clients go through this onboarding and still have the same experience while our team can still do what they need to do efficiently? And at the time before we implemented that type of onboarding, we had to get on and onboard people ourselves. And now our onboarding is self-paced. It's on demand, so it's better for the client. Yeah. And you get to do it in your own time and on your own time.
Which is great, because I am the kind of client who I don't spend a lot of, like, I'm fast. I'm fast with nearly everything. And so like what might take another client an hour on a Zoom call or 2 hours, I'm probably going to get done in 15 minutes. So as a client, it was really nice because I could just like buzz through it. And I get annoyed with Zoom calls on my calendar. Like I just don't like them. I try to just never have meetings or like as minimal as possible. And when people are like, let's hop on a quick call, I'm like, I would rather die. Even though I love people.
I feel you.
So it doesn't make any sense, but I love that. And it allows you as a business owner, as a CEO, and actually as a creative, because that is part of the heartbeat of who you are, and why your company works so well. It allows you to lean in extra in those high touch moments so that like as your customer, I'm getting the best of you as opposed to like you needing to phone it in on a Zoom call that is the same thing that you've run through with 300 million other people.
100%.
Right. So I love that. Okay. Sorry. I think I interrupted you. So you did the first part was like the 1,000 people. And then the second part was your team, or was there another second part?
Well, yeah, that would be the second part.
Great.
Is the system good enough where no one has to ask you a question?
Yes.
And those two things together will scale a business really far and really big.
And you have scaled fast. So what can you tell us? You know, I don't know your numbers and you don't need to tell whatever you don't want to tell, but like, can you give us some concept of, because I met you at the end of 2021. At what point did WorkPlay Branding open?
So
it's hard to answer that question.
This is a big question. And I can kind of go into the origin story of
great.
WorkPlay because that really has a big part in the scaling of this business. So around my middle of my college years, 2017, my mom approached me because I've always had a side hustle. My mom's always been doing something, you know. And she approached me and she was like, hey, you have this skill. I have this skill. What if we created a business together? And most importantly, she had a network. So I had a skill, she had a skill and a network. And so it's like, there could be a lot of great synergy.
So you were in college, also a competitive soccer player.
I was
at
also
this time.
playing
So
D1 soccer.
Like, not like you weren't doing anything.
I was playing D1 soccer, but I will say like soccer was such a passion of mine, but then business was always nagging me. I was like running from like the soccer field into the locker room at like 5:30 to get showered to run into the city to go to like some networking event. Like I was always like on the go trying to figure things out for my career. So my mom approached me 2017 and I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And between like 2017 and 2019, it really wasn't a business. It was more of like, what are we doing here? And it takes a few years to figure that out.
Oh my gosh. I feel like just now, like I started in 2009. And I feel like it's like 2024. I finally kind of know what I'm doing.
Oh, right.
It takes a while.
It just takes a while. And I think people underestimate that like building or envisioning process, like that can take a long time. So it was 2 years of really like, you know, testing things out, trying to get a process down, trying to get a methodology down. And in 2019, I was kind of faced with the decision of, do I continue soccer? Because I had torn my ACL twice. Wow. So I had 2 years of eligibility with my scholarship. So I had the ability to get a full master's program paid for completely and keep going in my soccer career, keep going in my school career. But there was like a point in time where it was just like, I know that we have something here. And it was like, I want to leave this chapter of my life with soccer and jump into this. And so that's really when, you know, when you make the leap, it's kind of like then the business starts following. So I got a bartending job to just make ends meet in Miami. And then 9 months later, I was able to quit that job and go full time. That was also right before COVID happened. COVID allowed us to really almost like be very like startup culture. Like it was all of us in this apartment just like going at it. And our business really grew during that time.
Which is interesting because you actually offer an in-person service.
Right. Isn't that
So
crazy?
it's highly unusual that you would grow so much during the pandemic.
I just think we were working on our business so much that it naturally grew, and it didn't really matter what the circumstances were. So it was very interesting. Also, I know like during that time, there was a huge, like almost like anxiety with business owners to get online and get visible online.
And you support that.
And we support that. So there was, there was a little bit of serendipity.
And if it's
with
just
that.
one photographer coming in to shoot one other person, the people who were scared could feel safe.
Exactly. And we put a lot of protocols in, but yeah, 2020 was interesting. In 2021 is when we switched over to a membership subscription-based model where it's a monthly fee.
So will you say what that is?
Sure.
I'm a adoring customer of this. So say what it is so people are understanding the concept.
So prior to 2021, we were more project-based, meaning we would do basically our methodology in just a 3-month project. So we would build your brand. So we would do like the colors, the fonts. We even did logos at the time. We would do brand messaging, and we would go into these areas. And then we would, content plan around the brand, and then we would go do the photo shoot, and then we would launch you on social. And so what would happen is like people came to us because they wanted the photos, and that's what was drawing them. And so what we did in 2021 was basically just scale that methodology. So we made it almost simplified to the point where it's like, what do we need to deliver the service? Well, we need the brand aesthetic. We need to define that for people. And then let's just give people what they want, which is the content, like the visual marketing campaigns that they create inside of the process. And then we can launch them on social. So in a way, the process became more simplified. And then we simplified the pricing structure, and it just took off. Like people were like, you can do 4 quarterly content shoots for $4.97 a month.
It was like when my friend Sarah Jenks was the one who introduced me to you, and she told me about it. And I was like, I have spent upwards of $6,000 on one photo shoot where I'm like, was allowed to wear 3 looks, and I was allowed to like take away like 20 photos or something. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but just the pricing was like, I was like, that is a no-brainer. So I want to highlight that what you were able to do, because you had the systems in place, you were able to scale and continue to offer a service at a no-brainer price, because you have systems doing so much of the heavy lifting. And obviously your content creators are incredible and highly skilled, so I don't want to undercut them. But it's incredible how that scale has allowed you to keep your offering, really affordable. It's premium. It's not like, oh, I don't need to think about this, but it's an easy yes.
Yes.
If you're already investing in photos, it's an easy yes.
Exactly. And I will say something about like the scaling of the systems here. Because we had a process and a methodology, we now have a direction for the systems to basically live under.
Right.
So without that methodology attached to it, our systems, even the best systems, can be all over the place. It's really hard to scale systems if you don't have a method that the systems go under. So the fact that we had like step 1, phase 2, phase 3, it now creates a more streamlined approach to it that we were able to get down to that $4.97 offer.
And was it during kind of like that time in 2020 when you were all in the apartment, just all working together? Was that the time when you were clarifying what the method was? Like how tell me more about clarifying your methodology and how that process went down.
Totally. Well, it kind of came down to skill. So we had me and my mom had the skill of being able to capture content on a camera. Like we know how to make someone look good through the lens of a camera. We also have the skill and the passion for creating a brand around that content. So not only are we creating the content, but we're also thinking about aesthetically, how can we make this cohesive? And so bringing that in almost like created the methodology in itself, where it's like, well, first we need the brand board so that we know how to edit the content. And then it came to a point before 2020 where it's like we would do that for someone and then they wouldn't use the content. And we'd be like, why aren't you using the content? They're like, it's amazing content, but I don't have the systems in my own business to put it on social. And we're like, oh, well, then we have to do that for you, because what's the point of us creating this content for you?
Right.
And so it just over in evolution and over periods of time, it just became, okay, this makes sense. And then it was trimming it down to what do people actually want in the process.
Right.
And that's when we started to scale in 2021.
Okay. So in 2021, you and I connected at the very end of the year. And at that time, so there was cause I've noticed the evolution over time too, that like things have even become more streamlined and simplified. And maybe you have more offerings than I'm aware of, but
we probably do.
Yeah, you probably do. So you were really listening to your customer in the feedback loop and then doubling down on what they were actually asking for and wanting versus just being like, oh, we could do this and we could do that and we could do that. And so you really started scaling in 2021.
2021. And I also have something to say about 2021, because I think this is important, because with like a ton of growth also can be a ton of hardship.
Yep.
So in 2021, we were scaling so fast, and I'm like, I haven't seen this number in a bank account before. And I was 23 at the time. I don't know, 22 or 23. And I was just like, whoa, like this is my career, right? At the same time, my mom was actually having seizures that we didn't know about for 9 months over the course of 2021, from the spring until the end. And we found out that she had a brain tumor. And there were months of 2021 where I thought my mom was literally going to die. And it turns out she's fine. She had brain surgery. It wasn't cancerous. It was great. But for a really good period of 2021, I thought that my mom had brain cancer and that she was going to literally die. And in that survival mode, I was like, we've got to get this business and these systems under control, because if I lose my mom, I also can't lose the business. So, because the business was our livelihood. I had nothing.
Hers also?
Hers, well.
So she had her chiropractic practice.
But she was so into WorkPlay that this was like my back was against the wall, basically.
Yeah.
And so because I was in survival mode with my mom, I then looked at business very differently. And I was like, we have to streamline our marketing. We have to streamline, our back-end systems. If I lose my mom, I'm not going to be myself for a while. Yeah. So the business has to keep running.
Wow.
And so that was a huge part.
So you were building it for a worst case scenario, which felt very alive and present for you.
Yep.
I'm so glad that didn't end up happening.
Yeah.
But like,
and then you came in at the end of that.
At the end of that. Yeah.
So you were kind of seeing the aftermath of what we had built from that.
When did she have her surgery?
September.
Of 2021.
Yes.
Okay. So I met you after, but definitely still in the,
yes.
I mean, when we go through a big health issue, or we have a family member go through, somebody we love go through that, the aftershock is very real and it stays with us for a long time.
Yeah. I'll go on plane rides, because on planes is where I feel like I almost disconnect from like the grounding energy, and I actually really love it. I love flying because of that. And I'll just like start crying out of nowhere. And then I have to remember, I'm like, you were in such survival mode for so long that coming out of that, it happens in waves almost.
It does. It does. We have to be gentle with ourselves and really like compassionate.
Yeah.
So now we're basically 2 years after when you and I met. So you scaled a lot in 2021. Were most of your new customers coming from referrals, or where were they coming from in 2021?
2021 was all word of mouth.
All word of mouth.
We literally have done zero marketing until 2023.
And then 2023, I was already a client, and I obviously came through word of mouth. I had sent you a few people through word of mouth. But then all of a sudden in 2023, I saw you on social at literally every one of my friends' events and like every event possible. And I was like, oh my God, Lyrik is everywhere. So tell me how that happened, because I knew about you, but it was like all of a sudden overnight, it seemed like you were everywhere. So what did you do? I know that was a plan, and I want to hear about it, because I don't think everyone is strategic in that way. And I was like, damn girl, like I was very impressed with the strategy and the like campaign that you had put together.
So I will say it was not on accident.
Of course
it was definitely strategically planned out. And I think that's important to say, because when you see a company experience a ton of momentum all of a sudden, it can kind of feel like it just happened and like they're just lucky.
And sometimes that's true.
Yes, true.
But it's nice to know when it's not, because we don't have it. We can't just like decide we're going to have a huge hockey stick growth by luck.
Totally.
Of course you can manifest it, whatever.
Yeah.
But like, it's so nice because there's something you can do about what you did. Like 100%. Anyone can put this in place.
100%. So our first and foremost, when it comes to marketing, we don't think about how do we get more people into our process.
Okay.
We know that will inevitably come to our way. We just have the confidence that we know that the people will find us. What is more interesting for our marketing is how can we expand the brand wider? And so when we ask ourselves that question.
And what does expand the brand wider mean?
It means for us, it could mean something very different for you or anyone listening, but for us, it means how can we position the brand next to big brand names that have trust and following, and brands that almost have a nostalgia about them, almost have like this star power about them. That was really important for me, because in my head, I'm like, I know that the copycats are going to come. I know that, I mean, no one's been able to do it. No one's been able to get it down to this price point, which I'm really happy about. But I know that it will come. And so for me, I'm like, our brand, what's important is to be the first to do it, and for people to know that we're the first to do it, and that we almost become a household name. So that was really important to me. So in order to do that, I knew that we had to position ourselves with bigger brands, bigger people with bigger brands, and almost like ride the wave of that. Yeah. And so
it's using other people's traffic and brand positioning and
totally. And not only that, but also allowing their people to see them in our process is also really important for me. And so having that authentic partnership was very important. And so, and also for their people to know that like, okay, WorkPlay Branding is legit. Like they are what they say they are. Yes. And so I needed those people to also believe in our brand as well. So that's one thing, actually getting the person to believe in the brand that they're supporting. Yeah. And then another thing is going after people who have overlapping circles. Because you could be in a circle, right? And you could be at the edge of another circle. And if I know that you're in this circle, maybe at the cusp of this circle, and then this circle is also overlapping, all I have to do is get in 3 different circles for you to feel like we are everywhere. Yeah. So that is really the strategy behind it, and being really meticulous about who is in what circle based off of who they serve. And then who they serve will naturally come. Right. If that makes sense.
100%. Okay. So what I saw as a bystander on social media, and then actually showing up at a few events, and I was like, oh, hey, Lyrik. you're actually here, was that you were at all of these events and you were doing mini branding shoots, which was obviously very effective because the people at the events are seeing you, obviously. But all the people on social witnessing the event are also seeing you. So it's a lot of brand visibility all at the same time. So how, whatever you feel like sharing, how did you connect with the people who were running those events to make that happen, to be seen by all of those intersecting circles?
So I would say, as advice, if you are wanting to do this strategy, find someone who will introduce you.
Great.
Find someone who believes in the brand who will then introduce you.
Great. So you weren't like cold DMing
no, oh my God,
the
no.
event organizer. I'm just checking.
That would terrify me. I'm like an introvert to the max. That would terrify me. I also know that that is not like socially savvy. If that makes sense. Like I was listening to a podcast. Her name's Africa Brooke. And
I love her.
I love her.
I can't wait for her book to come out. I want her on the podcast.
I love her. She calls it social seduction. And I want her to, she was like, oh, maybe I'll do a podcast episode. I like DM'd her. I'm like, please do a podcast episode on that. Because it's so true. It's like, you can't go in for the kill right away. You almost have to see who the friends are. And you have to be genuine with the friends and like kind of work your way around like that one person that you want to eventually endorse your product or service, because they're going to trust the people around them. And the people around them also have a lot to give you as well. So it's like, as you start to do that, you'll start to see doors open up. It becomes very natural, and then it just snowballs. Then it's like, oh, like
now I'm sure event producers are contacting you to be like, hey, can you do this at our thing? And now,
And I also want to say that a lot of people don't want to do things for free, and I will do things for free all day long. I'm like, yes, I'll be there, and I'll give all of your people free brand shoots. And I think when it comes to at least creative businesses, there's always this like, almost like this strong narrative of like, you got to get paid what you're worth, and and I think that's really great. But I also think that you can overdo that a little bit.
Yes.
And if you just if you show someone what you can do, that can say a lot.
It can, but I want to say the reason it works for you to do it for free is that you have a system that you know is incredibly profitable, and you have connected the dots, and you know when you show up at that event for free, you're getting clients. So you are getting paid.
Yes.
And that's the difference between you and somebody who's an artist and not a business owner yet, who is just like, I need to get paid my worth. Which is fine because or it's just different because what they're seeing is this is a day of my time, and they're thinking linearly, and you think, what's the other one?
I don't know, but I'm
exponentially.
Yes.
You have a system in place where one input can equal unlimited outputs versus people who are trading hours for dollars.
Yep.
So it's obviously very smart, and you learn from entrepreneurs early on that trading hours for dollars ain't the game. Yeah. So, okay. I love that so much. Did you sit down with your mom and make a list of the people who had that sort of like nostalgic star power, that you were like, okay, these are our dream brand alignments? Or okay, great.
And we have partnered with none of those people yet.
Isn't that fascinating? Okay, so I love that so much. That's great. So tell me more. What do you think's going on there? Because obviously what you're doing is working, but you haven't partnered with any of the people on your list yet.
I'm literally just, we're doing the strategy that I just explained. So we're still building our network right now. And it's getting us very far. And you even feel like, okay, I'm seeing you everywhere. I'm like, okay, I haven't even gotten to my list of
That's
people
amazing.
yet. So there's so much, like, that's when you cast a higher vision for the marketing, for the brand, everything else is just like, it's like, okay, we missed it here, but we got this. And that's why, like, I always want to go so far more than what I think is possible. Because when I miss, it's still so much better than what someone else's standard might be.
And it's maybe not even a miss, right? And it's not a miss. You built this list that's your dream partnerships. And like along the way, you're meeting all these people who you probably didn't even know existed. You wouldn't have put them on a list, but they're like a dream partnership in another way. Okay. So I want to highlight that in terms of growing a company, you know this already, but just for people listening, when you have either a software component or a recurring revenue membership subscription component, your valuation is so much larger. So those who are listening in and run a business, think about, is there a way that I could add a subscription model or a software model or both? Because your valuation just from a subscription model is going to be like 10x, yada, yada, yada. This is not my expertise, but it's just like,
it's pretty common knowledge now.
I've learned along the way. And so you've done that really beautifully. Do you guys have a software component?
We are building.
That's what I imagined.
But it's, we're building software, but I will say that, like, in order to have a subscription component or a software component, you always need the system, because these things come back to,
they depend on systems.
Bottom line systems. If you're building a tech company, the developer needs something to go off of. Yeah. The tech is all a system. So it's really interesting how the two correlate. But yes, we do. We are building tech right now. I think that if you are taking your business to like huge levels, you do have to have a tech component. That's just the day and age we live in.
Absolutely. Okay. So one thing that you have told me offline is that
oh my God.
you have a really like deep spiritual connection. And I think even what we just spoke about, having your dream list, but you're not even working with any of those people yet, but all of these beautiful things, like you've been led to all these other opportunities. I think it's related. And I would imagine it's related to your journey with your mom's illness as well. Yeah. So I want to know, how has your spiritual connection informed your business? How have the two intermingled?
Yeah. So this is something I'm still figuring out. And it's something that's been coming at the forefront for my entire 20s now. And when I would like to say of this as like my third eye was almost like opened. It was opened in a very almost like non-consensual way. And I say this in the fact that I was experiencing things that I had no control over while I was early 20s, like 19 or 20, and I was experiencing like a lot of like paranormal stuff, and like it was scary. Like it was almost like a trauma that I was experiencing. And so with those experiences, I shoved it away.
Did it just like happen all of a sudden, or did somebody do something that opened it up?
It was around someone that had that around them, and I was in a relationship with them, and then it was opened up basically. And so it was a very scary, almost, I don't like to use the word trauma, but it was very it was scary. It was scary, and I was very scared of it. And so from those experiences, I couldn't close the door anymore. So when things like when I went into places, I would feel the energy in there, and I would know if something was there or if a message was coming through. It was like, I'm like, how do I get this to stop? Yeah. I'm trying to grow a business. I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to just like live my life. And this keeps happening. I can't go into like a hotel room I can't like travel somewhere, go into a hotel room and like not know like if something's going to happen that night and a message is going to come through from someone I don't know. And that was like really, that was so I don't know. I was very like, I want to just shut this off. And it's interesting because as I've grown in my career, I've become more confident in myself and then also my experiences. So the same thing has happened in my spiritual journey. And so I became more confident in the fact that, and through mentorship as well, like I was not doing this on my own. So it was like, I did seek help for like, how do I get rid of this? More of like, how do I get rid of this? And through mentors that were able to like kind of explain to me what was happening, I was then able to be like, oh, I can harness this as a tool in my life rather than having it as like almost like a thing that I don't want, any part of. And so once I learned how to harness that as a tool, I then became way more open to things that I wanted versus things that I didn't want. And so now what it looks like for me is like, I can sometimes I'm able to receive messages from just all sorts of walks of life that help me almost see the path of where to go. And I think when we started to kind of like turn the hill of scaling, I had such a profound experience at like my grandpa's farm with all of like my ancestors. And then that's when I was like, oh, I'm so deeply connected and the answers are all right here through this gift that I have. And I can lean on my ancestors to show me different pathways and things like that. And sometimes I'm not amazing at it. Like sometimes I still get experiences where I'm like, what the hell was that? Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, like what is it? I'm still learning how to harness it, but that is a journey that I have been like, I think just even this last year, I've realized is such a superpower in like the game of business, because you're no longer searching for answers that someone else is telling you, or like, you're taking something at face value when it's said to you, but you know what the true path is, because it's almost like a nudge. It's like a nudge here, a nudge there. It's like, oh, it's something doesn't feel a hell yes. Why doesn't it feel a hell yes? Okay, I can get the answer. Yeah. And so it's interesting. Love it. And so I told you before we started recording, I don't know exactly the right way to explain it, because again, I'm still trying to figure it out myself. But that's how it's kind of shown up in my life. And I'll get messages before I shoot a client about yes, it's weird.
Like how do they come? Are you hearing words? Are you getting visions? Is it a feeling?
It's always in my sleep.
Okay.
And I always almost like, it's like a half awake, half like it's a different state. Yeah. And it's almost like the veil is very thin. And then I'm able to see or hear something or someone.
For your client. Well, sometimes it's not.
Sometimes I can't control if it's like a client or some person next door, or someone who like in like a networking event, like, and sometimes it's like very confusing. I'm like, who is this person trying to tell me something? And then I'll get the information later, and I'll be like, oh, that was the message. So I'm not perfect. I'm not like, like the Long Island medium who's like, oh yeah, and this is coming through from like your aunt. It's not as like like precise as that for me, at least right now, but that is typically how it happens, either before or after I'm like interacting with someone. And sometimes depending on the person, it can be like so intense. Wow.
Like what kind of messages have you received the day, like while you're sleeping before a shoot for a client?
I don't know if I fully can disclose, because
that makes sense.
I also want to keep, it's interesting with this almost like gift. It kind of feels like you're like intruding on people's lives.
That makes sense.
And I don't know if someone has had like a certain trauma around the person that's sending me the message. I don't know if the message itself is something that they even want to handle in the moment of speaking to me. Because a lot of times it's like, okay, I'm meeting this person for the first time, and I just got a message from someone I don't know,
Right.
but I know it's like somewhat connected to them, and they're telling me something that I don't have context around. So that is kind of why I'm like, I don't really tell people.
Absolutely.
And I kind of just keep it to myself. And it almost gives me, depending on the message, gives me more empathy.
Yes.
For the person or understanding them.
Right. It helps guide
to
you.
Serve them.
Even if you're not telling them.
Exactly.
You have full permission if you ever get a message for me to tell me.
Okay.
Just letting you know. And then do you also receive messages for yourself to guide your business, to guide different choices in your life? And if so, do you have an example?
Yes. Yes. And I will say that this happened on one of your retreats. And what was the retreat called?
Conduit.
Yes. Conduit. And we went into this meditation.
Yeah, we did the soul voice meditation with Megan Watterson.
Yes. And that was the first time I had ever been almost in the presence of her work. I know that she's big time, but I didn't, because I'm not in that space as much. And I was just like, whoa, everything that this woman is spot on to how, just how things systematically work in my brain when it comes to spirit. And so when we went through that meditation, it was just immediate. It was bam. And then it was the message was so clear on where to go, the path on the scaling path of WorkPlay Branding, the decisions that have to be made, the bigger ones, right? Everything it's not a SOP, do this, do this, do this. I would love if it was like that, but it's not.
Excuse me, Spirit, could you deliver the SOP?
Oh my God. Maybe that's what I should ask.
That would be amazing.
And if you could have written format and video format, that would be great.
And also deliver it in a Google Sheet. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. And maybe in a ClickUp space as well. If that could just be in my ClickUp space, that would be great. No, it doesn't work like that, unfortunately. It's more of here is the path. Here's the possibility. So it's casting that vision really high and wide. And when it comes from spirit, it's almost this is what you have to do. This is and it's never the thing that you want it to be. It's never go partner with this person, right? It's always the more of in order to do this, you have to be connected here. And in order to do this, you need to solve this almost generational trauma here. And so that was the message that I got, but it was so specific, if that makes sense, to what was being held in my mind's eye. Because I think the question was what do I need in order to expand?
It was something what do I need to know in order to expand my capacity wider?
Yes. And that question, I think, also really helps the message come through really clear. And so that's how it came through. And it's almost, it's so crazy because it's this, it's so intangible. So if it happens for you, it's this inner knowing. And it's hard to put into words exactly what the steps are because it doesn't come like that. But I know they're you got to stay connected here. And this generational trauma, you have to break here.
Wow. And
that is what will get you here. And it was a very profound experience because I had never harnessed it in that way. So usually when things come to me, it's I'm okay, it's here. But I've never actually harnessed that in that very specific and quick way. And also not sleeping, because usually I do this in a more subconscious state.
Exactly. Yeah. It's cool that you could sort of call upon it at will.
Yeah. Which was really different for me. And really cool. And I was really happy that I went to that.
I'm so glad you were there. Okay. I have I could ask you a million other things. But I will ask you this. For somebody who's listening who maybe doesn't get it, why visuals matter. You are such a queen of aesthetics. Like, it's amazing to follow. I know your WorkPlay Branding brand is like absolutely incredible. I really enjoy following your personal Instagram because I'm just like, this girl is like living art. And I don't have the skill set. I do have this skill set, not like you, but like I really don't have the desire for creating that level of aesthetic. But I do understand, because when we do our brand shoots for my launches and we do the creative direction and the whole thing, I can see the way that having a strong visual and a strong through line of the essence of that campaign, I can see how it drives sales because it like casts a spell for people. So can you talk about, why do you love aesthetics so much? Why do you think it's important to business? How is beauty or just a brand visual related to making money? And what have you seen with your clients around that?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So that's like a huge question.
We could do an entire other episode.
Totally.
Plus you could write a book about it.
Yes. And I love it. I love this question so much because so many people talk about like tactics, right? Marketing tactics, but not a lot of people talk about visual strategy. And I think the people that get it when it comes to visual strategy, and like my whole mission with WorkPlay Branding is to actually make that accessible for people. So there's a huge, like, it costs a lot of money to create a production. And so that's one of the missions of WorkPlay Branding, to actually bring that to people. But when it comes to visual marketing, I was actually listening to a Joe Rogan podcast. I know that's kind of controversial, but I was, and there was this.
Do not at me about Joe Rogan, by the way. Just, I'm telling people listening.
Okay. Sorry.
No, you can say whatever you want. I actually have a disclaimer because of the nature of our society around when someone says something, people then assuming it's just, I have a disclaimer at the beginning of every episode that says people, people can celebrate whoever or like listen to whoever they want to. I'm just telling people, don't send me a DM about it.
Okay. Sorry. It's nothing going to be about anything that you think it's going to be, but it was on in the car and the guest asked the question is like, are we the only animals on earth that can appreciate beauty or appreciate aesthetic?
What an interesting question.
And I was like, my ears perked up. Because that's like not your normal programming on Joe Rogan.
No, it is not.
And I was like, oh my God. I'm like, I don't know. Maybe. Yeah. And so there's like this innate almost thing in our brains humans have where we can appreciate something that's cohesive, something that's beautiful. And that in itself can really draw someone in. So just the beauty of visual marketing draws people in. Now there's another whole element of storytelling to visual marketing that you can't really do with words. And I know that you've been on our podcast talking about this idea of metaphor in your visuals.
We'll put it in the show notes.
It's amazing. And you were so spot on about this. And it's like, how can you bridge the gap between what you actually literally do and like an emotion behind the result that you're creating for your people? Yeah. And there's a lot of bridging that you can do there with visuals. So if you were to say for your Plenty campaign in your actual word marketing, right? Like, oh, and talk about bubbles and your like alter ego, people would be like, what are you talking about? Like, I thought we were like going into like
abundance. It would not make any sense in writing.
It wouldn't make any sense. But when it comes into a visual, you're telling a story. A storyline about the end result that you give people. And then you can get like really creative with that story. You can create a whole world with that story and people get drawn into that world. And then their ears perk up. Their eyes are like, whoa, like what's this? Like, I want to be a part of this. Even though it's not that they wanted to be bubbles or like on a vintage car. It's that they really dropped into what it meant to be in that visual world. And then they're like, oh yeah, abundance, money, like that. Yes, it's resonating. So it's like this bridge. And then from more of just a tactical marketing strategy with visual marketing, if you look at, I like to use the Coca-Cola example. If you look at Coca-Cola, they sell the same thing over and over and over again. How often do you see the same Coca-Cola commercial every single year? They change it every single year because people get bored of the same story, right? So on a quarterly basis in your business, how can you create different storylines for your products and your services? That's the beauty of visual marketing. And that's really where, the method, you don't have to use the method to do this, but the method is a really good tool to do this on a quarterly basis so that you're constantly telling stories with your visuals that constantly keep people engaged.
Yeah. So good. So good. And being part of the method has, given, while I don't do it, precisely the way you laid it out, like I do enough of it. You don't have to do it. No, but I do enough of it that it's given me a sense of freedom and permission to expand my creative edges in a way I would never have done if I didn't have these quarterly shoots. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I don't feel this pressure to make the one shoot I do every 3 to 5 years, which is what I was doing before, be the be all end all. And so I've given myself permission to be these different characters and to draw in these different visuals and go for it in a creative way that has really helped our business a lot. Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of different factors, but I know working with WorkPlay Branding has been one of them. And since the time we started working with you guys, we have doubled our business. And I know that it's it's one of the contributing factors. So thank you.
So cool to hear. So cool.
So where can people find you? Where can they connect with your business and learning more?
You can find us at WorkPlay Branding on Instagram. If you DM us brand, we'll just send you all the details. Our chatbot is automatic. So
love it.
We love ManyChat. So DM us brand, we'll send you all the details right away. You can find out details in written form, video form. You can get on a call with us. Lots of different ways you can find out. We also have a podcast, the WorkPlay podcast, where you can listen to people like yourself talk about, how they've built these 6 and 7 figure visual campaigns, which I think is really cool.
It was a fun conversation to have. It was it was a very different conversation than I usually have on podcasts. So it was really fun.
And you are the first episode. So just literally go down to the very first and you'll find Kate's episode.
I love that. I love that. So all that information will be in the show notes for you. Lyrik, this has been so fun. I learned a lot from you. I'm really inspired. I love being your customer. I love being your friend. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Oh, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Plenty. Isn't Lyrik inspiring? I really highly recommend going to check out WorkPlay Branding. I also am going to be sitting down with my team and thinking more about what can we systemize? How can we look at our systems and ask, could 1,000 people go through this? And also, could multiple people on the team do this as we expand? I mean, that was a huge takeaway. So many takeaways. Thank you for being here. If you want to know more about WorkPlay, you can go to katenorthrup.com/WorkPlay. And of course, if you liked this episode, if you found it helpful, text it to a friend. Tell them what you think they're going to get out of it. Leave a review, give us a rating, subscribe, and I can't wait to see you for the next episode of Plenty. Woohoo! You made it to the end of an episode of Plenty. Don't you feel expanded already? So if you liked this episode, go ahead and leave us a review. Subscribe to the podcast. Text a friend and let them know they need to listen in. That helps us spread the word so more people can experience Plenty together. And if you want to ease your path to creating wealth, I created a money breakthrough guide for you where I interviewed over 20 of my high-earning women friends, and I asked them what their biggest money breakthrough guide was, and the responses were so mind-blowing and helpful, I knew I needed to pass them along to you. This is the kind of thing that is often only shared behind closed doors, but now you can access it totally for free. So head over to katenorthrup.com/breakthroughs and get the guide. Again, that's katenorthrup.com/breakthroughs. And I'll see you next time for plenty.